By the late 8th century BC, the Assyrian Empire was advancing rapidly toward Judah, crushing regional kingdoms and creating a pervasive sense of dread. The climax of this tension arrives in the year 701 BC, when the Assyrian king Sennacherib lays siege to Jerusalem. Using detailed biblical texts, Assyrian military records, and astronomical eclipse calculations, we can date this specific military standoff with immense accuracy. This ancient relief displays the brutal mechanics of the Assyrian campaign. The threat to Jerusalem's fortifications was immediate, violent, and exhaustively documented. When you read the books of Kings and Isaiah, King Hezekiah's reign is defined by his survival of this one event. In standard biblical historiography, Hezekiah's legacy is defined by his physical endurance. He outlasted a hostile empire to secure the city's immediate future. But the Book of Chronicles operates differently. It is a highly curated historical document, and the chronicler has a significant interest in Hezekiah, dedicating 4 long chapters to his reign. Yet, out of those 4 chapters, only a single one discusses the military siege detailed in Kings and Isaiah. Look at this comparison matrix to see exactly what is missing. On the left, the timeline for Kings and Isaiah revolves tightly around the 701 BC siege. On the right, the Chronicles timeline displays 4 massive blocks of text. By isolating those blocks, we see that the chronicler intentionally ignores the famous Assyrian conflict for 75% of the narrative. He replaces the missing history with highly detailed accounts of a temple restoration and a massive Passover ritual. The author is intentionally pushing geopolitics to the margins. He is doing this to construct a different theology, positioning Hezekiah as a second Solomon. To understand why the chronicler focuses on religious reform, we have to look at the political landscape at the very start of Hezekiah's reign. The rival northern kingdom of Israel has completely collapsed. This image shows the desolate stone foundations of the ruined religious shrine at Tel Dan. The northern sites of worship that once competed with Jerusalem have been dismantled. This creates a unique opening. Because the northern population has no independent government left, Hezekiah is free to pull them toward the temple in Jerusalem without rival political interference. Often, King Josiah gets the credit for the great late monarchy temple rededication, largely because Kings highlights his discovery of the law. But the initial sweeping restoration actually begins here, under Hezekiah. Hezekiah utilized the destruction of the north as a strategic opportunity. He reclaimed a unified identity for all Israel through centralized worship. Hezekiah's primary mechanism for this national reunification is the Passover festival. Originally, in the Book of Exodus, Passover was a decentralized, local event. A family sacrificed a lamb and ate it inside their own home. To unify a fractured nation, Hezekiah evolves the ritual. He elevates Passover into a massive, centralized pilgrimage. As this map illustrates, scattered northern populations pull down into Judah. The chronicler uses the Hebrew word shuv, meaning return, a physical instruction to march to the temple, and a spiritual demand for repentance. This makes the Passover invitation a highly strategic campaign. It demands physical compliance to the New Jerusalem center and a profound spiritual realignment. The campaign succeeds. Messengers scour the territories, bringing an enormous flood of pilgrims into the city. But this creates a severe logistical crisis. The people arrive completely unprepared and ritually unclean. Looking at these dense columns of Levitical law, we see the rigid procedures required for sacrifices. To process the arriving crowds, the priests actually violate these precise regulations, risking the invalidation of the entire rededication. Recognizing the breach in protocol, Hezekiah pivots. He prays, asking God to extend mercy to those who have directed their hearts toward worship, deliberately elevating their internal intent over ritual perfection. God responds directly to this request. He hears the prayer from heaven and heals the people. This chart maps exactly why this sequence matters. In 2 Chronicles chapter 7, Solomon received a conditional covenant at Gibeon. If the people turn and seek, God will hear and heal. Hezekiah's specific actions achieve a strict fulfillment of those conditions. By securing God's healing through prayer, Hezekiah fulfills the precise mandate Solomon established for the nation's restoration. The execution of this Passover yields a permanent result. Hezekiah alters the definition of what constitutes Israel. Because the northern government is gone, we can erase the political borders from the map. all Israel is no longer defined by geography, monarchs, or state lines. It is an interconnected network of individuals tethered directly to Jerusalem. By participating in the Passover, the people are invoking the Exodus. They are shedding their failed political identities and rooting themselves in the shared memory of divine redemption. This resolves our opening anomaly. The chronicler skips the 701 BC Assyrian siege because surviving an empire only preserves a political state, and political states are inherently fragile. The text focuses on the cultic reform because that is the mechanism Hezekiah used to secure the population. He transitioned Israel from a vulnerable nation-state into an indestructible confessional community.